The day my mother walked away from me at gate 47, she didn't cry, didn't hesitate, didn't even lower her voice. She just pressed a few crumpled bills into my palm and said, "You're smart. Figure it out." Then she turned toward her new husband and his children, disappearing into first class like I was a suitcase she'd packed by mistake. I didn't chase her. I didn't scream. I stood there, 15 years old, watching something inside me go very still. Before I tell you how that moment set everything in motion, and how the truth eventually caught up with her, do me a small favor. Subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Stories like this only travel when people help carry them. My name is Evan Calder, and for most of my life I believed the wrong parent abandoned me. That night at the airport wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the point where the lie finally collapsed under its own weight. I grew up in a small rental house outside Mesa Ridge, a place with peeling paint, a humming refrigerator, and a backyard where the stars felt close enough to touch. My father, Julian Calder, worked in electronics repair. He fixed old radios, broken consoles, anything with wires and a pulse. On weekends, he'd take me out past the city lights, lay a blanket on the ground, and point upward, telling me how the stars worked. "Things don't just drift," he'd say. "They follow patterns. Even when it doesn't look like it." My mother, Helena, worked nonstop. Double shifts at diners, late nights cleaning offices. She was tired, but she laughed easily back then. She told me money meant safety, and safety meant freedom. I believed her. I believed them both. I thought families, once built, didn't just fall apart. I was wrong. When I was 9, the arguments started. Quiet at first. Then sharp. Then silent. One evening they sat me down on the couch, my mother stiff on one side, my father rigid on the other, and told me they were separating. I didn't understand the words they used: stability, responsibility, future, only that something solid had cracked. At first, my dad came every weekend. Then every few weeks. Then just phone calls. And every time I asked why I wasn't seeing him, my mother gave the same answer. He was busy. He wasn't sending enough money. He was starting a new life without us. I was a kid. I trusted her. The first time doubt crept in, it did so quietly. I was looking for batteries in her room when I saw an envelope with my name on it, my father's handwriting unmistakable. Before I could touch it, she shut the drawer and told me it was junk mail. She locked the door behind her. Something in my chest tightened, a warning I didn't yet know how to hear. Not long after, she decided we were moving. Said Mesa Ridge had nothing left for us. Overnight, everything connected to my father disappeared, his repair shop, the empty field where we watched stars, the life I remembered. And with every mile we put between us and that place, she repeated the same story. He doesn't call. He doesn't care. Eventually, even my memories started to bend. We settled in Arden Falls, where my mother took a serving job at a high-end restaurant. That's where she met Richard Hale. He wore expensive suits, spoke like the room belonged to him, and tipped like money was a performance. I remember the night she came home glowing, holding a receipt like a trophy. "He's important," she said. Connected. Things moved fast after that. New clothes. New heels. Nights where I ate dinner alone because she was networking. When she finally introduced us, Richard smiled politely, but his eyes slid past me. I wasn't the part of her life he was investing in. Within months, he proposed. We moved into his glass house on a hill, all clean lines and echoing hallways. I was given the smallest room, tucked behind the laundry area, like an afterthought. His children were polite but distant, especially his eldest daughter, who once said, loud enough for me to hear, that I didn't really fit their family image. What hurt most wasn't them. It was my mother's silence. Family dinners became performances I wasn't cast in. Conversations flowed around me, vacations, investments, schools I wasn't going to attend. When I spoke, my words dissolved into nothing. And slowly, my mother began rewriting our past. She talked about her hard years alone, brushed off my father as irrelevant, inconvenient. Each time she did, something inside me fractured. The moment everything shifted was the day I saw my father's name on her computer screen. I was printing homework when a news article popped up. A tech firm announcement. A photo of a man standing confidently in a glass office. The name beneath it made my stomach drop. Julian Calder, CEO. Before I could read more, my mother appeared behind me, slammed the laptop shut, and changed the password. Her face wasn't angry. It was afraid. That was when the questions began. And that was when the vacation was announced. A luxury getaway. 2 weeks. Everyone buzzing with excitement. Everyone except me. Something in my gut told me I wasn't meant to be part of that picture. Still, I clung to hope, because that's what kids do. They believe even when the truth is already sharpening its edges. The night before the trip, I overheard Richard say he didn't want complications. My mother replied quickly, I've handled it. Handled what? The next morning, we arrived at the airport before sunrise. 5 passports. Not 6. When I asked where my boarding pass was, my mother pulled me aside, eyes darting, voice low. Plans changed. That was when she handed me the money. That was when she walked away. And that was when I finally understood, I wasn't being left behind because I was unwanted by everyone. I was being removed because I no longer fit her future. I stood there long after the flight status flipped from boarding to departed. The screen blinked once, then settled, like the airport itself had already forgotten them. People rushed past me dragging suitcases, laughing, complaining, living. I felt separate from all of it, like I'd slipped out of the world without anyone noticing. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I texted. Nothing. I sat in one of the molded plastic chairs near a closed cafe, gripping the money so tightly my fingers ached. I bought the cheapest soda I could find just so security wouldn't tell me to move. It tasted flat and metallic. I didn't finish it. At some point, I ended up in the restroom, staring at my reflection under harsh fluorescent lights. My face looked smaller somehow, hollowed out. That's when it hit me, she hadn't left me at the airport. She'd been letting go of me for years. This was just the first time she'd done it openly. I pulled out my phone again. Scrolled past friends I couldn't call. Past relatives who believed whatever story my mother told them. And then I saw the name she'd spent years teaching me to distrust. Julian Calder. My father. The man who supposedly didn't care. The man who never tried. My thumb hovered over the screen. What if everything she said was true? What if he didn't answer? What if he did, but didn't want me? The fear sat heavy in my chest, but there was nothing left to lose. I pressed call. It rang once. Twice. Then his voice came through, immediate and unguarded. Evan? Just hearing my name in his voice nearly broke me. Yeah, I said, my throat tight. It's me. He didn't ask why I was calling. Didn't sound annoyed or surprised. The first thing he asked was, are you safe? I told him where I was. That I was alone. That my mother had left. There was a pause, not confusion, not doubt. Calculation. Then, calmly, stay where you are. Don't move. I'm coming. I told him he was hours away. He said, I have a way. Within minutes, an airport employee approached me and asked my name. She led me to a small private waiting room with water, snacks, and a blanket. I didn't realize how cold I was until then. Or how badly I needed someone to say, you're not on your own. The waiting was unbearable. Every passing minute stretched thin. I kept expecting someone to walk in and tell me it was a mistake, that no one was coming. But instead, 3 hours later, a door opened and a woman said softly, your father is here. She led me through restricted corridors and out onto the tarmac. Night air rushed over me. A private jet sat there, engines cooling, lights glowing against the dark. A tall man stepped down the stairs. I recognized him instantly. He didn't rush me. Didn't demand anything. He stopped a few feet away and asked quietly, can I hug you? I nodded. When he wrapped his arms around me, something inside me finally gave way. Not in a dramatic way. Just a long, silent release, like a breath I'd been holding for years. On the plane, he didn't interrogate me. He gave me food, let me shower, handed me a hoodie that smelled faintly like laundry detergent and something familiar. Then he opened a briefcase. Inside were letters. Cards. Birthday notes. School congratulations. Years worth. All written to you, he said. Most were returned. Some weren't. He showed me receipts. Delivery confirmations. Child support records. Every payment on time. Sometimes more than required. I stared at the proof, my stomach twisting. She told me you never sent anything, I whispered. He shook his head. I never missed a month. He showed me photos next, pictures he'd been sent of me over the years. Then he explained how he'd learned to check metadata. How many of them weren't real. Stock images. Old photos recycled. I thought you didn't want to talk to me, he said quietly. I didn't realize she wasn't letting you. The truth settled slowly, painfully. Every story she'd told me wasn't just wrong, it was constructed. Carefully. Repeatedly. For years. When we landed at his house overlooking Harbor Bay, exhaustion hit me hard. He showed me a bedroom upstairs. Simple. Blue walls. A telescope by the window. I kept it ready, he said. Just in case. On the desk was a box. Inside were gifts, one for every birthday I'd missed with him. Some perfect. Some slightly off. All chosen with effort. I didn't cry until he left the room. The next morning, I told him I needed to go back. I needed my things. I needed her to know I knew. He studied me for a long moment. Then nodded. We'll go together. His lawyer met us that afternoon. She explained what we needed to document. What my mother had done. What it meant legally. What it meant for me. Returning to Arden Falls felt unreal. The glass house looked the same, but hollow. My room hadn't changed. It looked like storage. In a drawer, we found photos of me with my father, hidden, bent, damaged. In the closet, boxes of unopened letters addressed to me. Proof. I wrote her a letter. Not angry. Just honest. I left it on the bed with my key and a legal notice she couldn't ignore. Then I walked away. She came back early from the trip. Neighbors texted. Alerts buzzed. Chaos. By the time she reached out, it was already too late. Because the truth she buried had finally surfaced, and it wasn't waiting quietly anymore. I was already back in North Shore City when the first call came through. I didn't answer it. Then another. And another. Voicemails stacked up faster than I could delete them. My name shouted, whispered, cried into silence. Accusations tangled with apologies, anger bleeding into panic. I didn't need to listen to know what she was saying. I'd heard versions of it my whole life. The next message didn't come from her. It came from a neighbor. She's back. Something's wrong. The house is a mess. I sat at my father's kitchen table staring at the screen. He didn't say anything, just poured me a glass of water and set it beside my hand. For the first time, he wasn't trying to protect me from the truth. He was letting me decide what to do with it. That evening, security called the house. There's a woman here asking for you, the guard said. She's upset. My chest tightened, but I nodded. Let her in. When my mother stepped into the living room, she looked smaller than I remembered. Not fragile, unraveled. Her hair was pulled back hastily, eyes rimmed red, expensive clothes wrinkled like she'd slept in them. She rushed toward me instinctively, arms lifting, but I stepped back. Sit down, I said. She froze. Then slowly lowered herself onto the edge of the couch like she didn't quite believe she'd been told no. What is this? She demanded. You disappear, leave letters, lawyers, do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I looked at her calmly. You left me at an airport with cash and told me to figure it out. Her mouth opened, then closed. That's not what happened. I reached over and placed the box of letters on the table. One stack at a time. Birthdays. Holidays. School events. All unopened. These are the years you told me he forgot. Her hands shook as she picked one up. I was going to give them to you. They were hidden, I said quietly. Still sealed. My father didn't speak. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. She turned on him then. You manipulated him. You poisoned him against me. He finally spoke, voice steady. I waited 15 years to hear his voice again. I didn't poison anything. Her anger cracked. I did what I had to do, she snapped. You don't understand how hard it was. I was trying to survive. You were trying to belong, I said. And I didn't fit. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. For a moment, I almost reached out. Almost. But then I remembered gate 47. The weight of the bills in my hand. The way she didn't look back. I'm not here to punish you, I said. I'm here because I needed you to know I know. She looked up sharply. So what now? You just leave me? After everything? I met her eyes. You left first. The doorbell rang. Security announced another visitor. Richard. He walked in irritated, not worried. Took one look at the room and sighed. I told you not to drag me into this. That was when I saw it clearly, the way he stood apart from her, the distance already carved between them. He didn't defend her. Didn't touch her shoulder. Didn't even look at me. She turned toward him, desperate. Tell them. Tell them this wasn't. He cut her off. This was your decision. You said the kid was old enough to manage. Kid. Not son. Not child. Just kid. Something inside her collapsed completely then. She sank back onto the couch, sobbing, finally alone in a room full of people. I took a slow breath. I didn't come here to destroy you, I said. I came to stop being destroyed. I stood. My father stood with me. And we left her there. The aftermath moved fast. Lawyers. Meetings. Documents. Things I never thought I'd understand at 15 but somehow did now. Authorities reviewed records. Bank statements. School correspondence. The pattern was undeniable. When the findings came back, the language was clinical but devastating. Emotional abandonment. Financial misuse. Systematic isolation. Sometimes harm isn't loud, one investigator said. Sometimes it's quiet and consistent. Courtrooms are strange places. So formal. So calm. As if lives aren't being rearranged inside them. When the judge spoke, I felt both lighter and heavier at once. Custody transferred. Contact limited. Everything she'd built on control collapsed in silence. Life with my father didn't feel like a miracle. It felt normal. Which, I realized, was the miracle. A real room. Therapy sessions. Teachers who knew my name. A future that didn't depend on pleasing someone else to earn space. Months later, a letter arrived from her. No excuses this time. Just one line that mattered. I was so afraid of losing everything that I lost you first. I folded the letter and put it away. Forgiveness came later, not as reconciliation, but as release. Years passed. I studied law. Focused on kids like me, ones caught between stories adults tell to protect themselves. Every case reminded me how easily truth can be buried, and how powerful it becomes once uncovered. I still think about that night at the airport sometimes. But I don't see abandonment anymore. I see the moment I stopped waiting. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. It became quieter. And for someone who had grown up bracing for emotional impact at every turn, quiet felt unfamiliar, but safe. I stayed with my father in North Shore City, finishing school while learning what it meant to live without constantly scanning a room for rejection. Therapy helped. Not in a dramatic, movie scene way, but in slow, uncomfortable honesty. I learned how much of my childhood had been shaped by fear of abandonment, how I'd learned to disappear before someone else could erase me. My father never tried to replace the years we lost with grand gestures. He showed up instead. Every day. He learned what food I liked. He came to school meetings. He listened more than he spoke. Sometimes we sat on the back deck in silence, watching the water move, and that was enough. No explanations. No rewriting. Just presence. The court proceedings ended quietly. My mother's visitation rights were limited and conditional. She didn't fight it the way I expected. I think, by then, she finally understood that the thing she was losing couldn't be negotiated back. Control doesn't rebuild trust. It only exposes its absence. I didn't see her again for a long time. When I turned 18, my father gave me a slim folder. Inside were copies of everything, court filings, correspondence, records, not to burden me, but so I'd never doubt my own memory again. No one gets to rewrite this for you, he said. That sentence stayed with me. I went on to study family and juvenile law. People often assume it came from anger. It didn't. It came from recognition. I'd seen how easily a child's reality could be edited by the adult with the loudest voice. I wanted to be someone who listened for what wasn't being said. Years later, I stood in a courtroom watching a teenager testify quietly while his parents spoke over him, correcting his feelings like grammar. I intervened, not aggressively, just firmly, and for the first time, I saw the look on a child's face when someone finally said, "Let him finish." That was when I knew I was exactly where I belonged. I did hear from my mother again. A few years after everything settled, she sent a letter, not a demand, not an excuse. She wrote about the emptiness of a house that had once felt like an achievement. About how the life she worked so hard to enter didn't hold her the way she expected. About realizing too late that belonging built on exclusion eventually collapses. She didn't ask me to come back. She asked if I was okay. I sat with that letter for a long time. Then I wrote back. I told her I was safe. That I had a life. That I hoped she was learning how to live honestly, even if it hurt. I didn't promise more than that. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't mean reopening doors. It means choosing not to carry the weight anymore. Now, when I think about Gate 47, I don't see a child being abandoned. I see a moment of brutal clarity. A moment when the truth finally stepped into the open, no longer softened by excuses or fear. I see a boy who stopped waiting for permission to exist. And I see a man who grew from that boy, not bitter, not broken, but grounded. Some people leave quietly. Others leave loudly. But the damage doesn't come from the departure, it comes from the years spent convincing someone they don't deserve to be chosen. If you've ever felt invisible in a place that should have been safe, if someone made you believe love was conditional, or that you were too much, or not enough, know this, the moment you stop waiting for their approval is the moment your life actually begins. If this story stayed with you, do me a small favor before you go. Subscribe, and share in the comments where you're listening from. Stories like this reach the people who need them most when we help carry them forward.